African presidents who spend the least time in office. Hello Explorers, welcome to another informative video presented to you by The Explorer and thanks for watching. In this video we shall examine African presidents of all time who spend the least time in office. African leaders are known to have a special attraction to power, and the continent is often referred to as the land of elected monarchs, with many countries being led by leaders who have held power for over decades. It will be surprising to hear of some who have held their supposed thrones just as short as 2 days. Well, one thing that remains certain is that if these leaders had a choice in their hands, they will not feature in this video. Though a few hold the distinction of holding power for the shortest time, power, which usually changes hands through democratic elections, is not characteristic of most of them, as they were either ousted through a coup or assassinated, bringing their time in power to an abrupt end. These coups orchestrated by military interventions are usually characterized by destabilization, and most importantly the reluctance of the military to return power to civilian rule. It also disrupts the democratic process, as has been the case in various West and North African countries. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn post notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. With no choice in sight, here are the African presidents who spend the least amount of time in office. Number 9. Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso, 5 years in office. Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara was a Burkinabe military officer and socialist revolutionary who served as the president of Burkina Faso from 1983 to 1987. A Marxist, Leninist and Pan-Africanist, he was viewed by supporters as a charismatic and iconic figure of revolution, and is sometimes referred to as Africa's Che Guevara. After being appointed prime minister in 1983, disputes with the sitting government led to Sankara's eventual imprisonment. And while he was under house arrest, a group of revolutionaries seized power on his behalf in a popularly supported coup later that year. Aged 33, Sankara became the president of the Republic of Upper Volta and immediately launched programs for social, ecological, and economic change, renaming the country to Burkina Faso, meaning land of incorruptible people. His foreign policies were centered at anti-imperialism, while he rejected aid from organizations such as the International Monetary Fund. Sankara welcomed foreign aid from other sources, but tried to reduce reliance on aid by boosting domestic revenues and diversifying the sources of assistance. Sankara was overthrown from power on October 15, 1987, and was reportedly assassinated by a group of soldiers. Number 8. Mohamed Morsi, Egypt, 368 days in office. Mohamed Morsi Issa al-Ayat was an Egyptian politician and engineer who served as the 5th president of Egypt from 30 June 2012 to 3 July 2013, when General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi removed him from office in a coup d'etat after protests in June. Morsi rose to power on 30 June 2012 as 5th president on the land of the pharaohs, and first democratically elected leader of Egypt. After years of rule by Hosni Mubarak, Morsi's government was involved in the struggle to stabilize the political system of Egypt. As president, Morsi issued a temporary constitutional declaration that granted him unlimited powers and the power to legislate without judicial oversight or review of his acts, stating that such a move was necessary in order for him to protect the nation from the Mubarak-era power structure, which he called remnants of the old regime. After being charged for spying for foreign militants and the arrest and torture of demonstrators who opposed his rule, he was sentenced to death in May 2015. Number 7. Robert Guei, Ivory Coast, 307 days in office. Robert Guei was the military ruler of the Ivory Coast from 24 December 1999 to October 2000. Born in Kabakuma, Guei was a career soldier under the French administration, trained in military school in France. He was an ardent supporter of longtime President Félix Houphouët-Boigny, but after the death of Houphouët-Boigny in 1993, Guei became distant from the new leader Henri Konan Bédié. Guei's refusal to mobilize his troops to resolve a political struggle between Bédié and the opposition leader Alassane Ouattara in October 1995 led to his dismissal. He was made a minister, but sacked again in August 1996 and forced out of the army in January 1997. Bédié was overthrown in a coup on the Christmas Eve of 1999, and although Guei had no role in the coup, the popular general was encouraged out of retirement to head to the junta until the next elections. On 4th January 2000, he became president of the republic. Guei stood in the October 2000 presidential election as an independent, allowing only one opposition candidate, Laurent Gbagbo. Guei was soundly defeated by Gbagbo but refused to recognize the result. After several street protests, Guei fled to Gisoso until he and his wife and kids were killed on the 19th of September 2002 under mysterious circumstances. I smell a conspiracy. Number 6. Michel Djotodia, Central African Republic, 292 days in office. Michel Amnondokro Djotodia is a Central African politician who was president of the Central African Republic from 2013 to 2014, who was the first Muslim to hold that office in the predominantly Christian country. Following the ousting of President Francois Bozize in March 2013, Michel Djotodia, who was the leader of the Seleka rebel group, became the first Muslim to be president of the Central African Republic. He was president for 9 months, between March 24, 2013 to January 10, 2014, before forced out of office by the international community after he was incapable of bringing an end to the civil war of Central African Republic between Muslims and Christians. His Seleka rebel group has been underlined as the forebearers of the war against Christians in the Central African Republic. Number 5. General Tito Okello, Uganda, 181 days in office. Tito Lutwa Okello was a Ugandan military officer and politician who served as the president of Uganda from 29th July 1985 until 26th January 1986. In July 1985, together with Basilio Olara Okello, Tito Lutwa Okello staged a coup d'etat that ousted President Milton Obote. He ruled as president for 6 months until he was overthrown by the National Resistance Army, operating under the leadership of the current president, Yoweri Museveni. He went into exile in Kenya after he was ousted. Okello remained in exile until 1993, when he was granted amnesty by President Museveni and returned to Kampala. He died 3 years later of an undisclosed illness on the 3rd June 1996. He was almost 82 years old at the time of his death. Tito was retrospectively awarded the Kagera National Medal of Honor for fighting against the Idi Amin dictatorship. Number 4. Melchior Ndadaye, Burundi, about 90 days in office. Melchior Ndadaye was a Burundian intellectual and politician who was the first democratically elected and first Hutu president of Burundi after winning the landmark 1993 election. Ndadaye took a cautious, moderate approach as president and attempted to resolve the deep ethnic divide in Burundian society. Despite his cautious approach to the presidency, some of his actions nevertheless provoked tensions in the community. And though he moved to attempt to smooth the country's bitter ethnic divide, his reforms antagonized soldiers in the Tutsi-dominated army, and he was assassinated amidst a failed military coup in October 1993, after only 3 months in office. His assassination sparked an array of brutal tit-for-tat massacres between the Tutsi and Hutu ethnic groups, and ultimately sparked the decade-long Burundi civil war. Number 3. Ernest Adegunle Shonekan, Nigeria, 83 days in office. Chief Ernest Adegunle Oladeinde Shonekan is a Nigerian aristocrat, lawyer, and businessman who was made interim president of Nigeria on the 26th of August 1993 by Ibrahim Babangida. On 2nd of January 1993, Shonekan assumed office as the head of Transitional Council and head of government under Ibrahim Babangida after Babangida's resignation from office August of that same year, following the annulment of the 12 June elections. He signed a decree establishing the interim national government led by Shonekan, making him Nigeria's 9th president on 26 August 1993. Babangida made the interim government weak by placing it under the control of military, and despite Shonekan's attempts of stabilizing the country, his government was seen as illegitimate. By November of that same year, another military coup took place, making Chief Shonekan's 3 months government come to an abrupt halt. Number 2. Yusuf Luli, Uganda, 68 days in office. Yusuf Luli was a Ugandan professor who served as the president of Uganda between 13th April and 20th June 1979. Many people are probably more knowledgeable of Uganda's Idi Amin and Yoweri Kaguta Museveni than they are of Yusuf Luli. After Tanzania ousted Idi Amin from power, with help from the Uganda National Liberation Front headed by Luli, Luli was installed as the president on 13 April 1979. He was toppled from government 68 days on June 20, 1979. After his election as interim leader of independent Uganda on April 13, 1979, he became unpopular with the National Consultative Commission, a quasi-parliament that had elected him to power. They accused him of management of government appointments without consulting with the commission. To this effect, he was overthrown on June 20, 1979 by the commission. On 21 October 1980, the Ugandan Court of Appeal ruled that Luli's removal had been unlawful, stating that Luli had the authority to appoint ministers without the NCC's approval. Though the ruling technically meant Luli could still claim to be president of Uganda, most nationals chose to ignore the decision, since the political situation in the country had rapidly developed since Luli's removal. Yusuf Luli reportedly died in 1984 of a kidney failure. Number 1. Christopher Okorocha, Sierra Leone, 2 days in office. Christopher Elnathan Okorocha was a Sierra Leonean politician who served as Governor General and President of Sierra Leone for 1 day in 1971. Colley was appointed Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire (OB) in 1965 for public services as minister without portfolio, and inducted as a Companion of the Order of St. Michael and St. George in 1973. Many assumed that Siaka Stevens was Sierra Leone's first president, an erroneous assumption that's widely accepted. But Christopher Elnathan Okorocha was the Chief Justice of Sierra Leone, and in April 1971, after a Republican constitution was introduced, he was made president, thus becoming Sierra Leone's first president. 2 days later, he handed power to Siaka Stevens, who was the then Prime Minister, hence serving technically as president for just a day. There you have it, explorers. Those were the African presidents who spent the least time as president in Africa. Thanks for watching this video, and if you did enjoy the video, do well to give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe and share with your friends.